What's up, Thrashers, and welcome back once again to the Thrash Maniac 99 YouTube channel, and I am back with yet another album review, and today I am talking about the latest offering from Malignant Aura, Where All of Worth Goes to Wither. This also came out on January 30th, this time on Memento Mori Records, and this is the band's second studio full-length overall, and shock of all shocks, I know I'm a broken record at this point, the first time I've checked out this band. And I got interested to check this out because, well, one, they're from Australia, and typically I tend to find myself enjoying Australian metal bands. And then two, I saw that this is described as Death Doom. And then third of all, I discovered that this was mastered by Arthur Risk. So it's like three of a perfect pair right there: an Australian band, a Death Doom band, and production work done by Arthur Risk to some extent. So, with that being said, let's talk about the music itself. So, the title track, which I know it's a continuing trend of the title track being an intro track, however, this is an intro that actually really works well. Starts off with gongs, which excuse me, something that I am not used to hearing in metal really at all is gongs, and then you get like dissonant ambience, and then you just get like cavernous doom riffs that feel very akin to bands like Disembowelment, which makes sense, Australian. I would also say like Spectral Voice, Temple of Void, even Old Hooded Menace to a degree, and there's haunting melodies. Like, it's only nearly a 3.5 minute intro track, but it leads perfectly into the second track, The Pathetic Festival, which is an interesting title. And right out of the rip, that song doesn't really start off as a Death Doom song. If anything, it sounds more like an old school death metal song, like tremolo, blast beats, triplet chugs. Like, a good chunk of this album, you get like triplet chugs or triplet stomps, but it really comes alive here at the opening of this track, and dare I say, when it gets into these like old school death metal moments, it's very reminiscent of like Morbid Angel and even Hate Eternal, with how obscenely technical it gets at times, or just flat out madness. It just turns into flat out madness a lot of times when it gets into these like old school death metal riffs and triplet chugs, blasts, tremolo, and then it goes into a lumbering groove before it settles into a doom-laden mood, like straight up Death Doom with some creepy melodies to boot. And then you get into the middle track of the album, which is the longest track at 13 minutes, languishing in the perpetual mire right out of the gate. Evil, doomy melodies and harmonies that feel very reminiscent of Hooded Menace. Like, Hooded Menace was the one band I saw get compared to when it comes to Malignant Aura, and I can definitely hear a lot of Hooded Menace on this album, like I said, particularly in the harmonies. Like, a lot of these harmonies feel like they could have been plucked out of, like, say, Never Cross the Dead or Effigies of Evil, like that particular era of Hooded Menace, which is my personal favorite era of the band. But again, it lumbers along pretty well. There's even some like really cool chugs with some awesome bends on the riff. And then even gets borderline proggy with like off-time rhythms. And then I love how the mood shifts from feeling like really sinister to pretty somber. And whenever this album gets at its most somber, it feels like My Dying Bride a little bit. Like, it's almost like this album is trying to encompass Old Hooded Menace, My Dying Bride, and a little old school death metal blended together. But man, the harmonies on this track are just infectious. Triplet chugs come back, blasts, tremolos, even a heavy, excuse me, hiccups. A heavy as fuck groove with massive riffs, and the only time on the album where you get like a true blue solo on the guitars, and it's wonderful. It is a wonderful lead to lead perfectly into the next track, Beneath a Crown of Anguish, which is a little over 10 minutes, and it's just packed to the brim with just everything. Evil melodic riff, but there's some dissonance thrown in, and the whole vibe, it just feels dark and oppressive, before it switches to just a sorrowful, somber sound. And then even a moment where you get like amazing harmonies on top of a killer groove, and then it just goes back into feeling like old school death metal. And then the closer, An Abhorrent Path to Providence, which is the second longest track at a little over 12 minutes, perfectly brings this album to a close. You get some awesome, once again, Hooded Menace harmonies. Some of the heaviest riffs on the entire album show up here, even some atonal melodies. And I actually, one of the big things about this track, the drum work, double bass gallops, even awesome drum fills, which the drums aren't super flashy except for on this track where drummer's going to town on that kit and it's fucking awesome. And I love how the mood somehow manages to combine feeling like sinister and somber at the same time. And then the leads here feel more like the big squealy dive bombs of like early Morbid Angel or most especially Slayer. And there's even like the vocals. I've not talked about the vocals. The vocals are cavernous, they're evil sounding, but on this track, he delivers a disgusting scream towards the end before the song just ends with those Hooded Menace harmonies. So, production wise, it's raw, it's murky, but it's mixed very well. And again, like the mastering was really well done. I mean, Arthur Risk knows what to do behind the production board and behind the console. As far as any negatives go, honestly, I don't really have any. Like, to be honest with you, this album kind of went by fast. I mean, it's an easy listen because it's only 5 tracks and it's like 45 and a half minutes long. So this was kind of an easy listen. Like, despite the songs being really long, the final 3 tracks being 10 plus minutes apiece, they didn't feel that long, which is interesting because usually with Doom, sometimes they can drag things out for too long, but this band manages to make things interesting, whether it be changing up the mood or making stuff faster at times or bringing things down to a mid-tempo or bringing it down to its slowest. So overall, this is possibly going to be a year ender for me. I'm gonna give this a 4.5. I really, really dug this album. It's just everything I like about Death Doom and then some, with some touches of old school death metal thrown in the mix. So if you're a fan of particularly, I would say, like Old Hooded Menace, My Dying Bride, and when it gets into the old school death metal parts, like I would say like Hate Eternal and Morbid Angel, I'd say give this a listen. This was some kick-ass stuff. But of course, those are just my opinions. What did you guys think? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. But until next time, thank you for watching, keep your horns high, and your dreams wet.